introduction, and thank you and the team, my former team, for inviting me to speak today as an honorary alum. As many of you know, even though I was never a core member myself, I bleed TFA, and especially so for our people of color. And so I couldn't be more thrilled than to be here with you all today at the Collective's annual brunch. As I understand it, the three pillars of the Collective are connect, develop, and act. Given my own experiences and the work that I'm currently doing at Rhodes, which stands for Reinventing Options for Adolescents Deserving Success, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how those three pillars have lived out in my own life and in the mission we've set out to achieve at Rhodes. So to me, the idea of connecting is about listening. It's about listening to those around you, listening to those who disagree with you, listening to what's in your heart and your soul, listening to your champions and your advisors, but mostly listening to those who are voiceless and need you to speak with them and sometimes for them. Listening to all of those things and so much more. And then figuring out what to do with it. Figuring out how to connect the dots in order to develop a plan and act on it. So how does that relate to me and my decision to go from being on the board of Rhodes for the last 3 years to being our charter network's full-time CEO? Well, when our board chair asked me to consider making the switch, it didn't take a whole lot of convincing. In fact, if I remember the conversation correctly, at that time, I didn't do much listening at all, but rather I told him all the reasons why I should do the job. I told him that as a board, we were pretty crazy to think that we could launch 2 new high schools at the same time and 18 miles apart, one in the South Bronx and one in East New York, Brownsville, that would essentially aim to change the life trajectories of 15 to 17-year-olds who were incredibly off track and mostly court-involved, homeless, in foster care, or in child protective services. I told him that there was no clear formula for success, and I certainly didn't have the answers for our students or our schools, but that I knew a couple of things for sure. That we've got to win this, that our students need us to make sure that Rhodes succeeds and it thrives, and that our city and our country need the same. And I told my board chair that I play to win, so sign me up. You see, as some of you in the room know, I'm unapologetically an education reform warrior. Because of my own personal experiences and what I've seen in classrooms, many of yours, and schools throughout the country, I deeply believe that access to an excellent education and dedicated educators, despite poverty and racism, can be a game changer. And I'm driven to do everything in my power to help make that a reality for way more kids who look like me or who are growing up in neighborhoods that look like the South Bronx one I grew up in. This drive, this sense of urgency, it's all rooted in my own personal story and knowing how possible it is to win. As some of you know, despite the fact that my grandparents never matriculated past grade school, that my parents had me as teenagers, and that I grew up as a Black Puerto Rican in the Mott Haven section of the South Bronx, not too far from where our Rhodes High School is located in the Bronx, that despite all of that, I went on to Yale University and Columbia Business School. And while I certainly credit my family with providing many of the conditions necessary to prioritize education and be the nerd that I was so proud to be, I know that my pathway could have been dramatically different had I not been blessed with amazing teachers every step of the way, who made sure I attended the district's magnet school in the 3rd grade and prep for prep in the 5th grade, which would ultimately lead me to the Trinity School, Yale, and beyond. But you see, the more I got involved with Rhodes as a board member and began to really listen to what our principals and our staff were telling us about the lived experiences of our students, the more I realized I was lucky. I was lucky in a lot of ways, and blind to what it means to really fight for young people that so many others have given up on. Let's face it, when many people hear about a 16-year-old who is very far behind and essentially performing at the 7th grade level versus being on track in the 11th grade and preparing for SATs and college applications, they think, oh dear, maybe it's time to focus on a job and not college. And then if you also hear that 7th grade 16-year-old is recovering from a drug addiction, is homeless, or has been arrested at least once in her life, that oh dear reaction can become even more pronounced. But here's the thing. If that 16-year-old was your child, what would you do? I know, because many of you do this in your own classrooms, in your own schools, in your own careers. You play to win. You do everything possible and then some to get your child into a setting that believes in his potential, that would push her to understand the hard work and dedication it would take to graduate from high school, and that would give her the social, emotional, and academic supports needed to help her thrive and succeed well beyond high school. And that's what we do at Rhodes, in a nutshell. We actively recruit young people who, for a host of reasons, may be a victim of intense trauma or tragedy, or may have made a bad choice as a child or a teenager. Young people who have been condemned to a lifetime of judgment rather than forgiveness and compassion. We recruit young people who, for the most part, haven't had the opportunity to experience a joyful childhood and haven't had schools and teachers who push them to meet high and rigorous academic standards, who expect them and support them to leverage their innate grit and resilience, to work on overdrive, graduate from high school, and go on to become the active and productive members of their families and the communities we know they want to be. And while there are some district schools and a handful of charters trying to do something similar, the truth is we're in a class by ourselves. There really aren't any other schools taking students in our age range, 15 to 16 years old, who have 11 credits or less, and again, are mostly court-involved, homeless, or otherwise engaged with some kind of city agency or system. And it's proof for the kind of demand for the opportunity that we provide at Rhodes. Well over 1,000 eligible students entered our lottery when we launched last year for what was only 300 seats across the 2 schools. So when I think about the collective's pillars of connect, develop, and act, I can't help but be proud that at Rhodes, we're trying to do just that. We're working hard to listen to what our young people are telling us and showing us that they need and they want. We're connecting the dots between them and the masses of adults who care about them and want to help them achieve their highest aspirations. We still don't have perfect answers, but we're working urgently every day to develop ideas, learn from our mistakes, double down on what's working, and accelerate the pace of our student success, as well as that of our schools and our network. And while I have always believed and continue to believe that we're going to win this thing, that we're going to knock down the barriers that are constantly being put up in front of my kids, and we're going to help them succeed, this week, I got a little more evidence that our unwavering belief in our young people and in what's possible is well worth it. You see, just yesterday, I got a screaming email. You know what I mean by screaming email. One of those 16-point multicolored fonts, all cap emails that ends with about 20 exclamation points. Yep, I got a screaming email from our Director of Curriculum and Instruction in the Bronx. The subject line said, Algebra Regents Passing Rate. And then in the body, the screaming email said, our passing rate is 86%. And if you can't understand why Kentia might have sent me a screaming email about that, or why that simple but loud email made me tear up a bit when I read it, first, let me just tell you that at the end of our first year, just last June, our passing rate for the same exam was 77.8% in the Bronx. And most people, including me, thought that was incredible and more than we could expect. Well, you know what? Many of the students who sat for the exam this past Thursday actually failed it last June, but have been determined to not only pass it, they were determined to crush it. And some students who passed it this week actually took it last June. Some students who passed it this week actually took it last June, and passed, but were determined to do better. In fact, one of our girls barely passed last year. She passed by 1 point because the state invalidated a question, and in the end, everyone was given 2 free points. This year, she went up to a 75. She didn't barely pass. She crushed it. Oh, and by the way, sadly, this same young lady who is in foster care lost her grandmother earlier this week and had to go to the wake on the same day as the regent. That didn't stop her. She came in early, she studied, she took her test, and then she went to the wake. Talk about resilience. Another one of our students who passed has a hell of a commute every morning to our South Bronx school as he's traveling with his sister from a shelter in Springfield Gardens, Queens. And another one of our students was sleeping on a friend's couch for the first half of the semester as she was estranged from her parents, but with the help of one of our social workers, has now been reunited with her father. And as if these stories, and so many of them like this, aren't enough to get you fired up and raring to work harder with and behalf of all of our kids, let me share that their math class was the first period of every day for a semester, which really forced them to put their commitment to the test because they had to come early, show up on time, and be fully ready to learn. And guess what? The math teacher who inspired, motivated, taught, and supported them every step of the way, one of our own, Abbas Manji, a 2009 New York City Corps member and current alum, and a member of the Collective, although I don't see him here today, is a second-year math teacher at Rhodes. And alongside his principal, Seth Flitt, a 2003 New York City Corps member and current alum, gets a ton of credit for this incredible algebra region with our students. I told you I believe TFA. Guys, I'm going to wrap up soon because, as you can probably tell, I can stand up here for days and brag about my students and do my best to encourage all of you to consider coming to work with us at Rhodes. And to that end, let me call out one more member of the Collective who is part of the Rhodes team and is here today. I'm so excited that largely thanks to Nikki Thompson's help, we have a TFA alum starting with us at Rhodes on Monday as our Director of Talent Recruitment and Development. Chauncey Nardi, Philly 07, is back there. You can go bum us Chauncey afterwards to learn more about Rhodes. And so thank you, but if you'll indulge me, let me close by sharing one more story about a really special young lady who attends our Brooklyn school. Let's call her Dee. The headline is that this week we found out that Dee has received a full scholarship to the Parsons School of Design pre-college summer program. For those of you unfamiliar with it, Parsons is one of the most prestigious art schools in the country, and Dee will be attending the summer program for high school students who are interested in a career in the arts. She'll also be receiving college credit and a Parsons Certificate of Excellence based on her performance. Beyond the obvious, let me tell you why this is a major accomplishment for our 16-year-old Dee, and another example of what's possible if we all lock arms together to listen to our young people who are most vulnerable and need us to take some kind of action to show them we care, we love them, and we believe that they can connect their own dots and achieve success. When she was 8 years old, Dee was forced to live with her biological mother, whom she had never known before, and to move away from her grandmother. Over the last 8 years, Dee has suffered both physical and verbal abuse from her mom, who doesn't really understand why she goes to school, since according to her, Dee is not destined for anything meaningful. As an escape over the years, Dee has often cut school to spend time with her grandmother, where she often listens to music and draws for hours. In the 7th grade, a teacher once saw Dee dancing in the yard and suggested that maybe she should become one of those video girls. At the time, Dee didn't know how to tell her teacher that she actually wanted to be a fashion designer. So instead, she walked away, she cried for hours, and she gave up her art. Until about 2 years ago, when she learned that she had been accepted to the High School of Fashion Industry. Unfortunately, in Dee's first year of high school, she lost her brother to gun violence, and that changed her attitude towards school, ultimately leading her to be overage, undercredited, and eligible for Rhodes. Dee's still living with her mother, and we know when things are tough for her because our mostly quiet young lady has visible mood swings at school on those days. Still, of course, we love Dee, and over time, her bonds with her art teacher and her real skill in that class have been key levers to help her regain her confidence and realize her potential. During her first year at Rhodes, Dee earned 12 credits. This past fall, she joined her school's first ever volleyball team, not knowing before that Black girls could actually play volleyball. And to her surprise, she loves it. Dee has moved from attending school 50% of the time at her previous high school to attending closer to 90% with us at Rhodes. She's also on the dance team, but she'll be the first to tell you, I'll never be a video vixen. I will do something with my art. And this summer, she'll be at Parsons on a full ride. Yes, Dee, you will do something with your art. Ladies and gentlemen, Dee is why I teach for America. And I thank you for the many ways that you have done, currently do, and will continue to teach for America. Thank you, and enjoy your afternoon.